It's really a pleasure to be here, and I think that I've realized today in hearing the different presentations that public policy making are really struggling with the same sort of issues that you are struggling in your private business. Where should we put our money to invest and to secure growth in a context where growth, as it was reminded to us this afternoon, is quite low? Where are the blind spots? I mean, in our vocabulary, we'll say, where are the market failures? Are our regulations still adjusted to the challenges that we were presented? Marshall mentioned clearly, both the pace, but also the magnitude of the change. And as a response to that challenges, I think the EU has put forward a strategy which is by far the most ambitious since the single market at the end of the 80s. And I will try to describe a different element, but basically this strategy serves the purpose of helping us to surf the wave, as what was mentioned by Peter even this morning. And the good news that I convey to you is that this strategy is very positive and wish to embrace a platform revolution. I think, the question that we hear, that you are aware of, that is emerging from the rise of the platform. I mean, the first one being, it's a job issue, because we have seen the sort of replacement of the comparison with incumbents and other activity industrial. This is really one of the key elements on which we are working now. So first, I would like to say three things in my presentation. Why now? Why now? And I think that the first element is very important. Why do we have designed this strategy now? I think, and then I will present to you the different features of this strategy and focus maybe more on online platform, because it's one of the subjects which is of interest for you. So why now? First, I think this is now evident that this is a deep transformation, that it's not just about putting more computer in a room, that it is about a changing society, changing behaviors, a new way of working, network. I mean, Marshall mentioned that. And we need to have the right mental map to consider what is needed. And this is not looking 10 years backwards, not 20 years backwards, in order to consider the challenge that is ahead. We need to go at the last technological revolution. Academics warned us since a few times that it will happen, but now we see that it's reality, and it has gained to the political power. And you see here one of the biggest painting, 600 square meter from Dufy, who has tried to reflect all the benefits of electricity, how it has changed the life of the people with light in cities, with radio, with movie, and also all the inventors of that. I would like also to flag maybe a darker or maybe another aspect of technological revolution. It is changing life, it is changing activity, political activity, but it's also requiring adjustment in terms of regulation. And I spotted recently an address by Theodore Roosevelt when he spoke to the Congress in '91. At that stage, the key issue, the economic issue, was should we or not implement the Sherman Act? And at that stage, the question was about trust. And he has developed in his narrative, in his speech, many similar situation with now. So we are in a situation where we have benefited from a huge progress, where the companies, private companies, have played a huge role to develop the economy. At the same time, there is the recognition that there is a need of more transparency, also to make sure that this boat that is the economy and the society is keeping everyone together. And I think that is one of the challenges that we are facing as a regulator, as a public authority. How are we making sure that the pace of the change is not affecting the fact that everyone goes in the same direction? It's easier when you have a board or a shareholder to convince. It's more difficult when you have constituencies and millions of people to drive in the same direction. The three lessons that we can learn from past technological revolution in terms of policy making is that first, you need to pay attention to competition issues. is dominant still contestable in this new era? And I think that this is a very valid question today. Second element, inequalities and consumer and citizen protection. Do we have to adjust the social contract in order to make sure that the losers are somehow protected and not completely ejected from the society? And the third element, we had an extraordinary presentation yesterday on this new fundamental technology. In which technologies do we have to invest in order to be on the map at the end of the technological revolution? Something that we maybe a bit lose sight when we consider this revolution is we have the impression that it's extremely quick, it's extremely rapid. In fact, it takes decades to take in place. And it will still take some time, but we need to really consider the investment that is needed in order to be at the right place on the map. So that's the first point. Why did we put forward this strategy? The second reason why we did act is political will. After the election in 2014, the European election, we felt the signal that we have to change the way we are working in the executive body. We need to be much more focused, much more linked to the policies that will help the people on the spot rather than making too broad and too horizontal policy. The new president, which was elected at that time, President Juncker, put directly as a second priority the digital single market as a key element for the development of Europe. It took the endorsement in front of the European Parliament and member states to make sure that the single market was not only an offline element, but was also something that was vivid for the internet. The stakes are extremely high. If you see here the different file on which we are working today between the banking union, the energy market. The digital single market is at the very bottom of this line, is 520 billion euros worth from now to 2020. So how do we want to harness the winds of change with our European flotille? We have three pillars in this strategy. The first one, I will not elaborate much on this one, which is basically an internal single market issue, which is how to reduce obstacles within member states and within the EU as such. The second pillar is critical. This is how can we make sure that we have the infrastructure, in the physical infrastructure, but also the infrastructure in terms of services, including online platform, that will be necessary in order for the digital economy to develop. And the third pillar is the preparation for a data-driven economy. What are the standards? What are the money? What is the money that is needed in order to make sure that we can go toward a data-driven economy? Before going to platform, I would like to focus on two things which I think are critical in this strategy. The first is the investment. We can see the third wave of this technological revolution. The first wave was the computers, the internet, the personal computer at home. The second wave has been marked by the mobility, so the fact that you can, with your mobile, access the internet everywhere. And the third wave, which is to come, is about IoTs, which is about internet everywhere, every time. And in order to reap and to get the benefits of this new transformation, which I describe here with different figures, we need to invest. And this is something that we have decided last April, which is to have a massive plan of investment in different directions. In priority direction, clearly on high-power computing and cloud services, about 6.7 billion. Cybersecurity is also an element through partnerships with the private sector. We have coordination of digital innovation hubs within Europe. And then we have all the work that is complementary and completely necessary in order to make sure that the standards can develop and that connected cars, mobile health service can flourish. This is, I think this is an attempt that is unknown since a decade on that. The second element I would like to insist on, in order to have a vivid digital economy, we need trust. And here, clearly, we receive the signal from EU citizens that there is a high margin of maneuver of progress here. If you see the figures here, 2/3 of Europeans wanted to give an explicit consent before seeing the data being used. The low level of trust in online businesses. Having said that, I mean, there is a sort of paradox here because they don't trust, but they use a lot. So we still have to manage this. But at the same time, we have to address this. And this is why we have adopted a very ambitious set of rules and principles that are being operated and implemented all across the EU with one set of law. It's really both to help the businesses also to cope with this privacy issue and to reduce the cost of compliance vis-à-vis this privacy issue. The fact that we have one supervisory authority now, that we have one set of law, we think that it can be beneficial for the private sector to a point of 2.3 billion a year. At the same time, we also have upgraded our requirement. So the requirement that data protection is to be integrated by design and by default in all the new products and mobile application, and also the rights such as the right to be forgotten in order to make sure that people, when they wish, can see the data being removed from the system. So online platform now. We have done a lot of work, including, by the way, with many of the experts that who are here today, in order to develop an approach, a political approach on platform. I mean, you have a lot of more and more academic paper on platform, but there are only very few political paper on the way we should be positioning authorities vis-à-vis platform. And I think that, in summary, our approach is based on four key ideas. First, platforms are here to stay, and they are beneficial, and we need to embrace that revolution. So that's the positive message. Second, a lot can be done in terms of adjustment with a better enforcement of existing regulation. So I will mention a couple of examples, but very often there is no need for new regulation, but there is a need first to better implement and better enforce existing regulation. The third element, which is critical, is that we need to do more co- and self-regulation. I think that the sort of positive narrative, the positive message that I mentioned vis-à-vis platform will be sustainable only if platforms themselves engage and take more voluntary actions and also take more responsibilities in this era. The fourth element, so positive enforcement, co-regulation. The fourth element is monitoring. So we will continue to explore things. We'll continue to work with academics in order to better understand. Understanding how it developed, I mean, I think we have just at the start of that, the impact on jobs, the relationship between businesses is something that we will continue to explore. So, I mean, I will pass quickly here. I mean, you are all aware of the importance of platform in terms of economic and societal phenomena now. Just a word on the process we had. I mean, this is the first time that a public authority is doing this assessment of the role of platform. We have had a very thorough public consultation, more than 10,000 replies via internet, where people in businesses, associations have put forward ideas and also comments on the role of platform. We have organized workshops. We have had a series of studies, and then we have published our communication on platform together with a series of reports last month. If you read our paper, you will see that we did not really solve the issue of the definition of platform. So for a politician, defining a platform is easy. You know, for them, you see Facebook, Google, but when you start to enter in the detail of what a platform is, it starts to be difficult. But I think that what we have reflected in our paper is a sort of two parts of the platform. The element which is about facilitating an interaction and collecting data, which is critical in many of the dimension of platform. You see that here there is an algorithm that match the two sets of users. You have the question of data collection, and you have the question of risk management and responsibility that emerge because these two sets of users do not know each other, and they are making a transaction or sharing an information without knowing each other. So it brings some new risk, ex ante or ex post. There is also the other picture that is also helpful to understand for us, because you know much more than I do the description and the content of the platform, but another mental image for us to understand, which is this plug for innovation. So the sort of industrial platform that is also there. We have, in our reflection, in our studies, we have a series of lessons that we have taken with us. First, it's very difficult to define one single definition that will fits all. So and that's one difficulty first. I mean, we have very different business model, very different sector of activity. If you compare, for instance, Airbnb for renting apartment and Le Bon Coin, who is doing a bit the same in France, but without any check, like an ad, that's completely different. But they are doing also the same. They have sometimes the same activity, same sector, and then also the difference of size. I mean, here nothing to be said between one platform with two guys in an office and Apple or Google. That's completely different. The second element that we drove out of our studies is really the benefits of online platforms. They are benefiting to consumer, to society, to innovation. So this is something that, again, we are still lacking a bit of figures, but in the literature review and in the studies that we have done, we have really concentrated on that. So I'm coming to the good question that Geoffrey mentioned in terms of challenge. So now, where is Europe in this map? So I think the image is more positive than just the 4% that I have here in a slide later on. It is true that we have still, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education, in terms of even in the area of consumer application revenue, for instance, in some sectors we are extremely solid. At the same time, we have to recognize that there is a gap still to be bridged in terms of global positioning vis-à-vis North America and Asia. We have also received a lot of some signals of concerns in our consultation, in the workshop we have organized. And here there is a lot of issues which relate to the B2B relationship. And here it's a situation where there is not obligatory a dominance by one of the company, but without this dominance, there is still companies that are struggling with terms of conditions, with lack of transparency, constraints that are being imposed to them, and that is being deemed by these companies as unfair. So if you want to, just remind yourself of one slide. This is a slide where you will capture a bit the approach of the EU. So as I said, we are trying to make sure that platform can grow and develop in Europe, being European platform, being American platform. We certainly will put a lot of energy and a lot of money here to enable startup to scale up. So this will be one of the critical elements of our policy. We will also make sure that there is more finance available. This is a capital market union attempt, which is really to develop the capital market in Europe. At the same time, we also need to address some of the key challenges that we think are important. We need compliance, but we have put proportionate compliance in a sense that when a new business is emerging, like Uber, for instance, clearly it raised some issues with the existing taxi regulation. There is two ways to reply to that situation: either to regulate Uber, or to say, or to look at the way that Uber is responding to the problem that were solved by the regulation for taxi, and to look whether there is some sort of possibility for some deregulation at some point. And this is what we are trying to put forward as part of the Commission in order to question the member states and another regulator to make sure that they have realized the need for a proportionate approach rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. We also think that it's very important to have a problem-driven approach. As I said, it's very difficult to define platform as a rule and with a single definition. And we really consider that in this respect, it's important to maintain a focus on the problem, to study what the problem is and to see what is the best solution. Maybe the solution is not ex ante, it may be ex post, but in any case, it needs to be clearly identified before. And I've mentioned also the co-regulation and voluntary efforts, which are critical. What we have also done in our policy paper is to try to give not a sort of regulation steer, but rather to try to identify 4 cardinal principles. It's principles that can be used at EU level by member states or even by regions if they wish to address these platform issues. And you can see also the different activities and different actions that we intend to take in all of them. I will start with level playing field. So I don't know whether level playing field rings the same as in Europe here. For us, it's basically to say, if you are offering the same services, being a platform and not being a platform, you should be regulated the same way. That's, for instance, the case for OTTs, which are providing services, communication services that are provided by communication services operators. The question is, are they regulated the same way? Today, it's not the case. So this is why we are, again, exploring different possibilities as part of our telecom review in order to make sure that both services will be regulated the same way, sometimes with some deregulation and sometimes with regulation. Acting responsibly. So I mentioned the fact that with this new institutional arrangement of a platform facilitating interaction, there is an impact on the risk and the management of the risk. What we have considered, and we have focused a lot on the question of liability per se, so the liability regime which is described in Europe in the e-commerce directive, which means that platforms benefit from a reduced liability regime in the sense that they are not obliged to control all the content that are being put in their remit. At the same time, we will not change this liability regime. At the same time, we really call platforms to step up their responsibility on their voluntary measures. This is the case, in particular, in the case of protection child from harmful material in the case of audiovisual. The third cardinal principle that we have put forward is about trust, transparency, and fairness. And here you have 2 legs in this area. First, what can we do to improve to respond to the requirement of transparency that many consumers are asking vis-à-vis platform. And here again, it's mainly about adjusting the existing regulations, for instance, the consumer protection regulation to avoid unfair practices. And we did that by a guidance that is precising for the way the unfair practices directive is applied for online platform. There is also another element which is linked to the business-to-business relationship. You remember the slide on concerns that was expressed by business in this area, and here it's pretty clear that we have 9 out of 10 respondents in our consultation which are unsatisfied by the B2B relationship, and I think that there is a common stake together with platform to improve this situation. So what we are going to do now is, what we have started to do, is to map out and complete this analysis to see the extent to which the problem raised in the consultation and in our analysis needs to be addressed, and how we could be addressing these issues. The fourth principle, open markets, I think it's very much in line with the idea of the promises of internet of remaining open, non-discriminatory, and to make sure that the data-driven economy can be based on the free flow of data across the economy. And here, this is something that we will be addressing by the end of the year. We are working on 2 sets of paper in order to facilitate free flow of data, in particular in Europe, for instance, to address limitations which are put by member states and which are restricting the free flow of data within Europe. So this is my last slide. So I just wanted to conclude in mentioning the fact that this digital single market strategy will be implemented in the next 6-7 months. I mean, it started 1 year ago, so it will be finished by 18 months. There will be key business opportunities linked to the different partnerships that we will have launched. And there is also, I think, here the opportunity for stakeholders and online also to engage, because a lot of the measures, a lot of the follow-up activities that we have designed will be based on cooperation with online platforms in the co-regulation or self-regulation processes. I thank you.
We have time for a couple of questions, and I see that people are lining up.
Thank you very much, Eric. Fantastic presentation. And I know you've done a tremendous amount of work thinking about the platform economy, what kind of structure. I'm interested in what kind of data you now realize you need to be able to do the things that you've laid out. So have you found that there's a deficit of information that can help you see if you're meeting those principles, what kind of KPIs you've set up, and then do you need new data to be able to do the kind of oversight, regulation, promotion, and will you seek that voluntarily, or will there be cases where you may need to mandate data collection?
I think we need a lot of data on a lot of things. I mean, first, I think we will need, if there was some academic or research on the definition issue, on the question of definition, it will be really important for us. We have three sets, three different areas where we really need more. The first is the impact of matching algorithm on the society. That's really something that is having now a transformative effect, and it's not just an economic problem, it's also a sort of a democratic problem. You remember the case a couple of weeks ago about Facebook. So I think the issue as to whether these algorithms are impacting the opinion that people have on issues, not only the decisions they take to buy or not some products, is critical. The second area is the area of responsibility. I think that the new institutional arrangement around platforms that are facilitating interaction between 2 sets of users, it provokes us on the question as to whether we have assigned all the risk properly, and whether there are blind spots or not in terms of risk assignment, and whether the risks are assigned to the right actors. And the last thing, I will, on top of my head, is related to the data asymmetry. There is a huge accumulation of data which is linked to the economy of scope. What can we say about that? Is there a limit that needs to be put forward? Is it not a problem? So this question, this relationship between platform and data is really critical.
I would suggest that the single digital market in Europe be treated as a startup, and that we devise a very simple metric to measure the impact of all these policies. And this is liquidity of the new market. Because now, for example, when you want to buy something on the internet, you can find Chinese and US offerings, but very rarely some European ones. So the liquidity of the internet online markets is very low for European business and products. And I think that what Alibaba and Google have done for the liquidity of the US and Asian markets has to be studied and applied to European, and then easily would be measuring what actually the policies would do. Of course, it's not that easy to devise the formula for that, but we can talk about it.
When you talk about liquidity, is the liquidity of the exchange of information, of the transactions, or of the platform itself?
Of all the transactions, how easy it is
Because we
to
are
find-
benefiting from Google in Europe. I mean, we are using it a lot. So we are benefiting a lot from Amazon, from these platforms. I mean, basically, these platforms are building in some way the single market that we failed to produce at some point. Huh? But in a sense, now if you want to buy a product on a platform in Europe, we are benefiting from this liquidity already. So I don't really get your.
We are, but if you just count the hits on the first page of Google, if you put some product, and probably Europe is producing it as well,
Yes. Yeah.
but there will be only 1 or 0 on the first page of Google, and this is where liquidity hits. You don't find it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, we certainly will have to work also on that. Yeah.
I would actually love your thoughts on a question that you posed. I mean, it's a really interesting problem. How would you think of regulating a platform that has become so essential, it's really infrastructure like roads and water and electricity and utilities? What would it mean if all of Google search and all of Bing search went down at the same time? How would you think about regulating something like that?
I mean, I think we are not. We are not doing that. So we are at this stage. We are. This is precisely the point. Is really you have a lot. I mean, I think what is.
I can turn off the cameras and we can have a discussion.
No. It's not. No, I think you look at the debate is clearly transparent in Europe. You have not only the Commission and the EU. Which is reflecting on it. In the UK, the House of Lords has produced a very interesting report after several hearings. In Germany, they have launched a green paper where they are asking a lot of questions. In France, they are working on a law and a regulation on their side. So I think, I think today we have one challenge, which is to understand in real time what happens. I think this challenge. We are on both sides. We are struggling with it in business sector and in the public sector. As I said, for the public sector, it's a bit more difficult to move because the boat is a bit bigger and maybe less agile. But I think I don't know what will happen in the future. It will really depend on the. It's a very fragile equilibrium between an evolution where you have new losers. New winners, the social acceptability of it, which will depend on as to whether what will be the quantity of growth that will be generated by platform, what will be the quantity of jobs that will be generated by platform, what is the level of acceptability of change by people. You cannot change people and replace them, like in theory. So it's real life. On the perception. By the population on the platform, but also, as I said, the online platform will play a big role in engaging in society or not. So the way they will be positioning themselves vis-à-vis the society and the concerns that are expressed will be critical. So in a sense, I cannot really reply. Whether even if you were to cut the camera, I cannot really say. Let's meet in 5 years' time and we'll see where we are.
Really quick one.
Yeah, quick one. That
20 seconds.
You spoke about the level playing field, OTT versus traditional telephony, Uber versus taxi, and so on. I mean, I know the answer is on a case-to-case basis, but is there a general thumb rule to say, do you regulate the new platform economy, or do you deregulate the existing physical economy, if you know what I mean? I mean, if the London taxis are fighting against Uber, do we reduce the regulation for London taxis, or do we increase? Is there a thumb rule that you follow?
No, I think it's very much in a case-by-case element. What is critical is really to have in mind the right target. If you want to regulate the renting of apartment in a city, I think it's maybe best to try to focus on the owner of the apartment rather than on the platform itself. Because in a sense, if you want to limit the number of nights per month or per year that will be rented in a normal apartment, it's maybe more efficient to have a system where you directly interact with the owner rather than asking the platform to get the information, but at the same time the owner can deal with different platforms. So I think first you need to see what is the problem, who is the best place to be regulated, and then to decide. Today there is quite a lot of debate about taxi, about apartment, but I think there are two different. You see, even within Europe, you have different approaches by different cities on these different issues. So I would say that we need a mix of harmonization where basically we rely all on the same rules, but also maybe on innovation, using the different experiments that are made by different cities to see what is best for the economy and for the whole society.